We're going to do a little bit of audio testing. If you're just joining us, give us a minute. We just want to
Test,
make
test,
sure.
test.
Check, check. Are you on the Twitch site?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay.
We're good.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Cloud Toad, also known as Derek Winkworth, and this is our co-host Matt Oswald, who is on mute, and uh, this is our 20 some, I don't know which one, 22nd, 23rd community live stream for the Enery Labs uh, project and community. And today we're actually going to be talking about some of the network automation certifications that are already out there by network vendors, and also certifications for networking from cloud vendors. We've made a little outline of some of the features of these certifications, and we'll go over them, and we'll have a pretty interesting discussion around them. Um, Before we get started, though, I just want to say for quite some time, a number of us have been predicting that these certifications would be surfacing, and the fact that they exist now, I think reflects. I mean, if vendors are doing it and cloud providers are doing it, these certifications reflect like a skill set that's valued in the marketplace. So already we're seeing, people are willing to pay money for these certifications, both to get trained, and there's organizations out there who are looking for people with certifications that indicate that this person has clue about network automation. So that's not really surprising if you've been in network automation for a little while. And it's great if this now it's easier than ever to jump in and get your feet wet and start following some of these learning tracks and get these certifications, right? To get some kind of I guess piece of paper under your belt or whatever. Um, so Matt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is funny. Like for me personally, when I made the leap from network engineer to, well, I guess back to software developer because I kind of did that really early on in my career. I I I stopped taking certifications, and it was easy to get wrapped up because this was all during the SDN hype, and as you and I have talked at nauseum, really, there were a lot of people that were like, "Oh my God, network engineers are going to be out of a job, and so there's no point in taking a CCIE and all that." My reason actually wasn't anything like that. It was just because I just lost interest in the sort of the cycle of constantly taking certifications. I felt like there was so much out there that just didn't have a certification that I just wanted to focus on instead. Even within networking, this is true. I think there's a lot within networking that's not covered really by any of the certifications. Um, so I'm curious, like in the realm of I guess I don't know 5 years after that, like after we've died down from the hype and everybody's becoming a little bit more pragmatic, if you're talking to somebody that's just setting out uh, to learn programming or learn automation in some way, how would you level set? How would you level set them as they look through the ecosystem of certifications here? Because there's trade-offs to these certs, right? Like, 5 years ago we didn't even think about having a cert for programming because it was a separate thing. Now we have certs from everybody about it. Um, what advice or words of caution would you offer someone that's starting down this path?
Yeah. Well, looking at the content, they cover a lot of topics. I mean, I have some of these topics. I mean, I have multiple books about just single topics that are addressed in these, like especially data representation, things like XML,
Sure.
YAML, and JSON. There's entire books written about each of those individually. I believe. Certainly XML. I have probably 6 different books about XML on my bookshelf right behind us.
Yeah.
And those are and those are covered, in amongst. We're talking about 1 week's worth of training here. Those are covered along with probably a dozen other very large topics. Like
Yep.
just looking at the list of some of these things like Git, how to build a CI/CD pipeline, test-driven development. I see Python is covered in at least two of these certifications. That's,
Get that
you
done
know,
in two
yeah,
days, right?
I think that we've mowed down an entire forest worth of trees to print those books on Python.
Yeah,
I'm seriously,
yeah.
there's a ton of that, right? One of the certs covers XPath. There's multiple books on XPath out in the universe. DevOps principles, practices, and tools. I mean, how many books? I mean, how many? There's training just on those things, and all of these are topics mixed, like I said, with a dozen other topics just within a week's timescale. The other thing is, I'm looking at these certs and I see that um, there's not a lot of stuff in here about networking in these certifications, or there's very little, like a day, like an overview of networking.
Hmm.
Um, you know, we've been saying, Matt and I've been saying, for these who are watching, for quite some time that learn like automation is something that it can where you have to know something about the domain that you're automating in, right? And if you're a network engineer, like Matt just said, we've been told for since probably 8 years now that network engineers are the mainframe programmers, of the day. And I think this has changed a lot in the last 18 months. But for a very long time, 7 or 8 years, we were told, you're obsolete. You learn to code, that kind of stuff. And what I would say, looking at the topics that are covered in these certs, is these are only useful if you know something about networking, right? And what people do every single day in their operations, troubleshooting or just doing modeling because they want to make a design change. They have to gather information and build models, whether you're troubleshooting or doing changes to the network. And if you should be familiar with that stuff because that's where when you have knowledge of those things, that's where these skills really come in and provide value, and they make you valuable. You are not obsolete. You are not the mainframe programmer of the day. Um, with these kind of skills, you're going to be very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, two things stick out to me. I think there's like the sort of traditional networking vendor automation certifications, and then there's the cloud network vendor certifications. There are trade-offs, I think, with there's a theme that I observe across the board, and this is true of basically any certification in IT, is that their primary focus is to show you how to use their stuff. Like that is like by far the biggest objective for any of this stuff, whether it's the GCP, networking certifications, AWS. I mean, the whole point is to show you how they do the subject at hand, which is status quo. So that's not news and that's not new to anybody. Anybody that's taken gone down the CCIE path or the JNCIE path, it's the same boat. There's always fundamentals sprinkled in, but it's all presented in that sort of very in that very implementation specific way. The other thing is with respect to these automation certifications, normally the argument for certifications is, well, there's perceived value, whether that perception is like valid or not, kind of doesn't matter. There's perceived value in these certifications at the employer level, and so if I get this cert, I can attach a monetary value to that. I
Yep.
can say I spend this amount of time taking the courses and the boot camps, and so I get a cert after that, and then I get an ROI of X. That's fine. We're not going to go down that path in this conversation. Do what you need to do. For me, though, like for these automation certifications, they're nascent. They're very, very newly established. Nobody really knows about them. So that argument isn't quite there. And on top of the fact, what we just discussed, which is that they cover like freaking everything, and there's no way that they can be covered in any sort of proper depth. I would say for me, just seeing where these certifications are today, and who knows where they're going to be in 5 years, but today, I think if you the right way to go about looking at these certifications is as an intro, not necessarily from an intro, like a difficulty perspective, because I'm sure they're complicated and tough.
Sure.
But my point is like, don't think of them as like the end all be all. Like, I'm going to take this cert and I'm going to be an expert at cloud networking or automation, network automation. Like, it's just impossible to do that. Like the biggest teacher for these subjects is real life production operations experience. Like, that is by far the biggest teacher. So do not stop at any one of these certifications and be like, I'm an expert, because it's just there's a physics limitation here. It's impossible to pack enough information into any one of these certs to make you like a master. Like it's just impossible. So use this as like a framework for like figuring out what's out there, because they're going to throw a bunch of crap at you, probably stuff that you may never have heard before. Use that as a guide for all of the different things you didn't know about. And then once you got the cert, go back and say, all right, I want to focus on this one area for like a long time and really, really get good at it. I think that's like the best way to structure a lot of these.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been a software engineer on and off throughout my career. I know you have as well. And one thing that's sort of, well, it's actually true of both network engineers and software engineers, in my opinion. There's a word out there called autodidactic, and it means that you're able to teach yourself things, right? And the thing is, you have to do that in tech, whether you're a developer or you're a network engineer. If you have to be spoon-fed every piece of knowledge, then you're not going to make it.
100%.
There's a reason why books are precious to us, right? And good online blogs and tutorials are like gold, because they can distill very complicated topics into something consumable. And what's really happening there is that they're seeding like just enough, I guess, foundation in your mind to make to just enough clarity for you to go and expand on that topic without getting without feeling like you're lost, right? Or wondering if you're even looking at the right thing when you're learning about it. And that's how you should look at all of this training, I would say.
For sure.
All of this is about just putting just enough foundation in your mind for you to go and teach yourself subsequently. Now there is a lot of advanced training for some of these topics, especially things around DevOps tools like Salt and Ansible. Um, there's and well, DevOps and um, actually quite a few of these topics. You can go and you can take even more advanced training, but I would argue that at some point, the payoff for more training becomes less and less, and you should definitely put the energy, if you're going to take these courses, into exploring these topics yourself, lab them, just like you would network scenarios, and and go and just look at them like Matt said, they're a starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it. We existing IT certifications. We take them also for the pay raise that comes with it, or the new employer. But the main reason is because we want to learn about the technologies that we're going to deal with in production, and production is the best teacher, regardless of what you're learning about. So don't stop at the cert. Like look for ways to leverage the tools that you've learned. Um, to improve things for your organization, because once you do that, you're going to learn way more than any book or week long boot camp will teach you, like by far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So let's talk about some of these certifications. I actually missed one that I put up there, Matt. Juniper does have a cloud certification, which that covers OpenStack and Kubernetes and some other things, which I
Yeah.
forgot to put on there. But we
Yeah.
can talk about that too. Um, Actually, we'll start. Cisco just announced some DevNet certifications up through the P level, so they have a CCNA specialist and CCNP level certs now for DevNet that covers, it covers all these topics in increasing detail, right? As you go through these certifications, XML, JSON, and YAML, right? Data representation, serialization, test-driven development, version control, in general, and then it covers Git more specifically, REST interfaces and APIs, just in general. That's a huge topic. You'll have to for sure be familiar with those things, because not every REST API has a library that can be easily consumed in the language of your choice, and you will probably have to end up crafting methods or functions to make specific kinds of API calls. Of course, Cisco specific SDKs and APIs, CI/CD pipelines. Um, the A level certification does have a section on network fundamentals, but that's not expanded on in the later certifications.
Hmm.
Um, all that is CCNA, and a lot of that is repeated in the next two levels, right? But the next two levels are interesting because they actually fan out. There's not just one specialist level certification or one professional level certification. What they decided to do was to actually create, it looks like, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine different or eight different specializations. So you have to take some core related topics for each of those certs, and that covers a lot of the stuff we just mentioned. That's what the core is, I guess. And then they go more, and then you have the specialization that occurs where you cover enterprise, uh, Cisco enterprise related stuff, data center related stuff, collaboration. So that's like what is that? That's WebEx and Call Manager. I don't know if they still call it Call Manager. I'm sure there's tons of stuff there. Um, inside the under the collaboration envelope, their video conferencing stuff, um, security and SP, and then they have a DevOps specialization, which is pretty interesting. And then
Yeah, I'm actually
I
looking at that right now. Some of this stuff kind of surprised me. I mean, Cisco has a lot of like what they basically what they'll do is they'll take existing open source project like Kubernetes as an example, and they have their own they call it Cisco Container Platform. So I'm sure this is aimed at that, but they talk about. I mean, this particular exam topic is describe the concepts and objects of Kubernetes, deploy applications to a Kubernetes cluster, utilize Kubernetes objects to build a deployment to meet requirements. I mean, this is the kind of thing like, we still, I think, in this industry, we're still wrapped around the axle of like learning how to do config management. There's so much out there that you can learn, even if you don't think you're going to do it as your day job. Like any network engineer could make the argument that they're never going to interact directly with Kubernetes for their day job. That's probably a realist, at least from a deployment perspective. That's probably a realistic scenario. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go through the process yourself so that you can understand how applications are deployed to Kubernetes or what even that is. I think we look at concepts that we don't know and just sort of treat it as this ethereal thing when in reality, maybe after a day or two of labbing, it would become way more tangible to us. And I was kind of surprised and impressed that they have that in there.
Yeah, and I think some of that ties back to their CI/CD stuff. When I was looking, I got the impression looking at the description that they were actually talking about the scripts and the sort of mini apps that people write to automate things and how to create a CI/CD pipeline for those and how to deploy those, not just higher level sort of end user
Yeah.
facing apps, right? So if you know that I do like that they cover those topics because you know um, that's half the battle right there, right? Is how to deploy the application in an automated way.
Or even
Um,
how to just how to get insight into what the apps folks are doing. Like I actually presented on this like my first week at Juniper. I gave a talk at Network Field Day, and like there's so much value in being able to just write simple script. The scripts that we tell network engineers to write, you don't have to just write them against network devices. Like you can write Python scripts to access anything that's of value, and the Kubernetes API is out there, and it contains a ton of useful information about what your developers and applications folks have deployed. If you could only speak the small amount of kube speak, to understand what's there, it takes maybe a day or two of understanding, and then you're good. Tie into that API, and now you know what your developers are doing, and you can help serve them a little better. I think.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Cisco goes up, like I said, they go up to the P level. So, and again, it's specialized up through the P level. So you're choosing that. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention there's IoT and WebEx specializations as well at those levels. So it is 8 specializations that they have for automation, which seems like a lot to me. It seems like a lot. Um,
Yeah, I
but
feel like the product specific specializations will be mostly the resellers.
yeah,
Based on my experience, they'll have requirements there to maintain a certain level of partner certification if they do those specialties.
yeah. There is a CCIE level certification coming out for DevNet, but there's no details available. But that's right on their website, so we have that to look forward to, I suppose. I might get a CCIE again if that happens. Um, but I do work at Juniper, and I will be getting these following certs actually for certain. So Juniper has what they call the Juniper. By the way, those were called the Cisco DevNet certifications. Juniper calls theirs the Juniper Platform Automation and DevOps certification. They also have a cloud certification path, which we'll cover momentarily. But let's do this platform automation and DevOps thing first. So similar to Cisco, they cover like a base set of topics, like twice over. There's 2 different level certs available at this time: associate and specialist. I know that there is a professional level cert that is, I think, imminent in its release, and it covers again, it just expands a lot on these topics. But again, we're talking about XML, JSON, YAML, netconf and REST, Python, PyZ, which is a great tool, by the way. It's a library that allows you to do easily make netconf calls using Python syntax, so you don't have to actually structure your own XML docs or XML requests and then have to parse XML responses. It comes back and is translated one way or the other to like a dictionary or some nested data structure. That makes it easier to navigate those things. XPath, again, DevOps principles, practice tools, and frameworks. There's a whole section around that. Ansible. Um, then we have on-box and off-box scripting. So, and I'm sure that that's covered. Actually, I didn't see that covered on in the DevNet certifications, but I know they have Python and Tickle on in iOS. I'm not sure if those. I didn't see those covered though.
Yeah, I don't think they didn't separate off box versus on box on the outline. It's possible once you get into the like Python topic that they dive into that specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do dive into that specifically. As some of you know, Juniper has Onbox a number of Onbox APIs that allow you to write, if you want, straight up C applications that leverage, different like internal libraries. You could write your own routing protocol. You can write your own. There's a language out there called P4. If as a network engineer, you should at least go and read like some introductory white paper on it. It's really interesting because it is for networking. It is literally a programming language meant for networking, and you can specify networks and network behavior in code using the P4 language. Well, you could write your own P4 interpreter using some of these APIs that are on Box, but we have those are sort of different than what we would call MGD-based automation, which is things like event scripts. So these are triggered by events on the box. Then you have manually triggered scripts like that can be run in ops mode, like that can modify the output of show commands or take many show commands and then piece together output that sort of whatever analyzes all that and makes some kind of information so that you don't have to do that analysis yourself at the command line. Um, there's file copies. There's other things you can do um, from the ops mode. Then there's commit mode scripting, right? And this is when you're in commit mode and different sorts of scripts you can write that. And these can be written in Python, Xalt, and Slacks, and those are covered in this training. Jinja 2, we covered Jinja 2, which is a very popular templating tool. It's certainly used in Ansible quite heavily, and I think in Stackstorm or no, they're doing something else in Stackstorm, right?
Nope, Stackstorm uses both Jinja 2 as well as a painful templating language called Yacl, which is YAQL. Um, don't learn that. Just stick with Jinja.
Yeah. So in case, actually, I'll just say this because not everyone knows what these things are, but SaltStack what is it? What does Ansible call their event engine? It's what was it like
Wasn't aware they
Tower?
had one, to be honest.
They do have one. They have an event-driven thing.
Ah, right. Okay, got it. Yeah, their enterprise product has some basic event-driven primitives within it. Yeah, but that's Ansible Tower is what that's called.
Ansible Tower. So
But that's
SaltStack,
their enterprise product.
Ansible Tower, and then there's a Stackstorm. They have well, a big chunk of their primary value is overlapping their event-driven frameworks, the event-driven automation frameworks that you can trigger workflows based on events, and then those workflows and go and do things in the environment and send notifications or they collect information or whatever it is. That's what they or anything, right? We have Stackstorm scripts in the NRE Labs project that tweet things, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. We
so
do.
anyways, it's a lot of the same topics. We cover OpenConfig and Yang, and we cover some of those on-box APIs that we were talking about earlier, like Jet. Um, so these, this goes to the A and S level. The Juniper stuff does. A lot of that is actually a lot of this training, shockingly, because Matt and I actually have read the training guides and provided feedback to the people developing them, and a lot of it is actually vendor neutral, the training. So this is actually one of Juniper's more popular training programs.
Yeah, yeah. For a lot of this stuff, it does take. It's funny, you can't always tell what's vendor specific and what's not. From the outside in, unless you have some experience with it. Like Juniper Extension Toolkit, obviously is Juno specific. Anytime you're dealing with specifics like SDKs on top of Junos, yeah, that's going to be specific. But like to your point, like netconf yang, those are all IETF standards that are implemented on more than just Junos. Same thing with anytime you're dealing with like basic data serialization. Yeah, Junos doesn't have its own data serialization format. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is absolutely transferable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um,
Wouldn't that be great though if we invented our own like data format just because? That would be very networking.
it would be. So actually, it looks like both vendors, uh, both Cisco and Juniper, anyways, offer cloud-based certification as well, and that's something I should have tried to intercept before we started the show, but I didn't realize that actually. And they offer Cisco offers cloud certification up to CCNP Cloud. Um, Matt, why don't you pull that up real quick while I talk because
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. The, well, Juniper certainly does also offer cloud-based training, and they cover things like, of course, Contrail Enterprise. It's their flagship cloud product. Um, they which use cases, architecture. They cover Kubernetes integration with Contrail, OpenShift, which is, I believe, OpenShift is Red Hat's Kubernetes, right? Or is it their Red Hat's OpenStack? I can't remember.
The Cisco CCNA Cloud, if I search for CCNA Cloud or CCNP Cloud, it looks like both of those are being deprecated.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, it sounds like this is what's part of being because the new sort of CCNA and CCNP are like many faceted, and it sounds like these are being rolled into those. So there's no longer going to be a CCNA Cloud or a CCNP Cloud. There's a big warning if I search for CCNA Cloud or CCNP Cloud. I go to those pages. There's a huge warning on the top that says, hey, FYI, as of February 2020, Cisco will release a new consolidated CCNA exam. Um, and yeah, it sounds like that's going to be part of it.
Oh, sweet. Oh, so what are they consolidating it with? Sorry.
Sounds like everything. I mean, the just the one track. There's just sort of one enterprise. I think they call it enterprise networking track.
Okay.
And so everything is on that. I mean, if you look at that overview, there's network fundamentals, which is what you might expect. There's also security fundamentals. There's automation and programmability rolled in there. Um,
Oh, that's just in their So this is not even their automation programmability specialization. This is just their standard enterprise track.
Yep, the new CCNA. In fact, if you scroll down, there's a section that says migration to the new program, and then it says the new CCNA certification replaces these certifications, and it lists literally 9 certs. So these are all going away, being replaced by the one CCNA.
Wow.
CCNA Cloud, Collaboration, Data Center, Industrial, Routing and Switching, Security, Service Provider, Wireless, and CCDA, all gone. Now part of the one CCNA program. So you
That
can
seems
either
excessive.
you can you can either take the one CCNA or you can wrap your mouth around a fire hose and turn it on. That's one aspect of this.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So we cover, like I said, the Juniper one, the cloud track covers, Contrail's integration with things like OpenShift. What is OpenShift? It's okay. So OpenShift is Red Hat's
Yeah. Red Hat's
Kubernetes-based container
distribution of
solution.
Kubernetes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They cover vCenter integration, multi-cloud networking, which includes Azure and AWS stuff, and service chaining. They cover service chaining, which is pretty interesting. So there's, and there those by the way, the Juniper Cloud training now goes all the way up to expert. So that's something, if you're that's uh, if that's something you're interested in. I mean, that'd be quite the progression. I can't even imagine what that lab must be like. I wonder if we can get. I know the guys that we know the guys that developed that certification. We should get them on here and get them to talk
Sure.
about it
Yeah.
because that'd be
Yeah,
bonkers,
that'd be
right?
good.
Oh, look, they cover OpenStack as well. Uh, yeah, security, monitoring, analytics, telemetry. They cover a lot of stuff in the cloud
Yeah,
certification.
there's a lot here. Yeah, just between all of the different things under the Contrail umbrella, and then AppFormix and multi-cloud, which it sounds like that. Interconnect a private enterprise data center with public clouds. So you're going to need to know a little bit about public cloud networking in order to connect to them. Um, Transit VPC being part of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and just in orchestration, you got OpenStack, VMware, and Kubernetes. You know all those, right? Done.
yeah, done. You're an expert.
Yeah, this is I'm sort of
It's the
picking up on a trend here, which is that a lot of times when we talked about IE level certs, it was almost always about um, depth into a particular platform. So like, do you know all of the different nerd knobs within a platform, and can you use them to construct a network that accomplishes XYZ purposes, right? Like it was mostly about depth. Looking at these certs, and this is not just the Juniper side, the same thing when I looked over at the even just the NP level of certs that we saw previously, where we rattled off all of those topics that you need to know. I mean, this is breadth. Like you got to know a lot of wildly different technologies and be able to stitch them together
Yeah, that's got
in
to be a wild lab.
certs. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I mean, the version control on the lab itself must be insane,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
In order to expect people to come to the right solution.
If yeah, I mean, yeah, I just hope they're using infrastructure as code. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Because if they're building all of this by hand, it's like, man.
So that's interesting. So Cisco's phasing out their cloud, their cloud specific certificate, or at least their NA cloud specific certification.
Yeah, I think the argument is that they're consolidating. I remember listening to a few Packet Pusher shows where they talked about the speculated about the motivation behind them, and I think they might have had somebody from Cisco on to um, talk about the changes. This was, I think, a year ago that these changes were at least announced,
Yeah.
maybe a little less.
Yeah, and Juniper just came out with this JNCIE cloud probably in the last few months, as I recall. I
Yeah,
think
I think
in
so.
July or June. Well, no, they were working in July. I think they announced it in August, right?
Hmm.
Wow. So, um, now what's interesting if you're listening and you're wondering, do I go for cloud? Do I go for automation? Of every single thing that we've named off in the automation related certs, both in Cisco, almost everything, right? Both in the Cisco and the Juniper thing, things like data representation and APIs and DevOps practices and frameworks and CI/CD pipelines and Ansible and all those tools and stuff. All of that applies to cloud. So it's not going to hurt you to have both certifications. Like if you're at one point in my life, I don't know if I'm going to say it's certification whoring. If that's which I might do again because this looks interesting to me. I kind of want to do this now. Um, having both the automation and the cloud certification is I think they would go hand in hand to be completely honest. Um, Yeah, I mean everyone's multi-cloud now. You're gonna do on-prem stuff. You're gonna do stuff in the cloud. It's not gonna hurt to have both certifications. Uh,
Yeah.
well, both kinds. So we've covered networking vendor certifications so far. We covered Cisco and Juniper automation certifications. We covered Cisco and Juniper cloud certifications. But what a lot of people might not know, I think this is endlessly fascinating. Like there's so much smack I could talk about this. Is that cloud vendors now have a whole myriad range of certifications, and they have both Google and Amazon have networking advanced or professional level network certifications, which as prerequisites have um, uh, like a general cloud administration type certification for their platforms, which includes networking. right? And other things, storage and VMs and all that stuff. And then with that in hand, you can go and you can get um, these professional or advanced networking certifications. So there's like a two was that two-tiered sort of certification track in place already for with individual cloud vendors. And what I for those of us who are old enough to remember when everything was just so easy, you wouldn't need certified network people to do cloud. And here we are. We're going. So we covered. There's four cloud certifications we talked about on this podcast, and two of them are for cloud vendors themselves.
Yeah.
So and they both actually cover roughly the same stuff. Just just each their respective versions of those things, right? So, Matt, you wanna talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that was interesting to me is there's, as I mentioned before, a lot of these certifications do focus on implementation. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't think networking is an industry where we're accustomed to thinking in abstract concepts for long. Like, we're capable of it for short spurts, but a lot of times, when in order to actually like properly learn a subject, it has to be within the concept of an implementation, because it has to be real. We got to be able to play with it. We got to be able to lab it and whatnot. So the reality is, again, the AWS cert is gonna use a lot of AWS terminology, but the good news is networking is networking. So there are topics in here that have nothing to do with AWS, that AWS obviously will use to connect instances together. Things like basic CIDR, subnetting, that kind of thing, IPv6 transition challenges, which was nice to see in here. Networking, just basically, OSI model sort of networking architectures, doing things like IPVPN or MPLS, things like that. So there's a lot in here that doesn't necessarily have to do just with AWS. It'll be interesting to me as we start to see more and more companies that are already in the cloud hire out of the universities and whatnot. I wonder if their first sort of foray into networking will be through these kind of certifications. Like, just take an example of a student who has focused on building basic little apps within AWS, just because that's where the school wants their students to learn, because it's easy to spin things up that way. And so the student starts to learn networking the AWS way, and then or learn how to run infrastructure the AWS way, and then they're like, hey, there's this stuff about networking that seems to be like a black box, which doesn't sound familiar at all, right? Like, that's kind of how most people get into networking. They look at this black box, and they're either terrified of it and they run away, or they're terrified of it and they run to it. And I feel like that might happen here too, because looking at both the AWS and the GCP certifications, there's a lot here that is just raw networking knowledge, at least at the lowest sort of introductory level. I find that to be interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting actually. I mean, yeah, there are people who um, their introduction to being tech people, whether it's they're admins or whatever, is cloud, right? I mean,
Yeah,
one of the another thing that happened early on with cloud is that they made it sound like it was the app people who were driving cloud consumption and interfacing with the cloud provider at the service level and building these environments, and that might have been true in the very beginning when things were very simple, but in a lot of places now the app people do not manage those services at that level. They
yeah,
they have actual cloud admins. They're just like sysadmins that run the cloud environment, and their apps are deployed on top of those
yeah,
environments. And so those cloud admins, right? They're they they understand concepts like virtual routers and virtual firewalls and cloud connectivity with dynamic routing and stuff like that. And their intro to networking will be via the cloud and not traditional networking, which makes me feel
yeah.
very old.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. This is another thing. Like, I try to when I talk to network engineers about what they view as the apps people, like, there's so many different types of people there. And as an example, like, as a like, how many software developers do you think eagerly, like with relish, look forward to managing their own CI/CD pipelines? Like, nobody. That doesn't happen. Developers hate managing that kind of stuff. They view that as infrastructure. Or databases. That's another thing. A lot of developers like to refer to things like databases as infrastructure. So like as a network engineer looking at that whole world, and they lump all of that together as developers, it's like, no, dude, that infrastructure line is like way further up than you think. And
Mm.
but I say that as a form of encouragement, because the reality is the infrastructure space is way bigger than anybody realizes, and that includes a lot of this cloud stuff. It's not developers that are managing this. It's really sysadmins or network engineers that just learned the new implementations.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we actually said the name of these certs. So Google has a cert called the Google Professional Cloud Network Engineer.
Whew,
I
that's a
think
mouthful.
the prerequisite to that is I can't remember the name of the course, but it's basic cloud admin that does cover some basic networking stuff, and this is sort of like the advanced stuff. And it's both networking within your cloud environment, how to set up VPCs and routing and subnets inside of VPCs, how to stand up a cloud router, and then there's
Yeah, that's a sorry to interrupt. The way that Google seems to have these laid out, they have an associate cert, right, which is
yeah.
just a one single. It's kind of like their CCENT, right? It's like you take this and it's like a light introduction to the whole gamut, and then you go to the professional certifications. And that's where you can split off into like cloud or data, um, networking, security, collaboration, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think all of Google's training, like Google maintains like official training on like Udemy. I think it's Udemy,
Hmm.
or Coursera. I can't. One of the two. I can't remember. You know what? I'm gonna look that up real quick. But actually, before I do that, they also cover things that are in some network shops, anyways. The network people don't actually always maintain these things, but in under the umbrella of this certification, they're included, and that's standing up virtual load balancers, security stuff like firewalls, like IPS services, DDoS services. What is I don't even know what WAF is. What is WAF?
Web application firewall.
Oh, there you go. I know now. It's some kind of layer 7
And I'm
firewall,
not
I'm
even a
assuming.
security person, so that tells you I only know that term from listening to Risky Business all the time.
So you set up all that stuff, DNS, how to stand up, looks like content distribution network stuff, um, and then traditional things, IPsec VPN, BGP, and monitoring. So there's, quite, that's pretty interesting certification if you want to sort of expand your skill set beyond what you have. I think that would go hand in hand again with these other certifications from the vendors, from Cisco and Juniper specifically. I didn't even look if Arista. I know Arista has certifications now. I don't know if they have automation certifications. They probably do.
Hmm,
Uh,
probably.
Amazon certified advanced networking. It actually for the purpose of this show, it covers for all the same stuff as the GPCNE certification, all virtually everything we just mentioned. Um, well, in a nutshell, when I was comparing them, I didn't really see that much of a difference. There is some Google specific stuff, and the Google thing, obviously, and Amazon specific stuff. It just seemed like there was like an 80 or 85% overlap between
Yeah.
those two certs.
Yeah, there's if you're looking at the difference between the platforms, there are some differences. Like AWS doesn't have any layer two between instances, whereas GCP does. You can set up a subnet that has it's a broadcast domain effectively. So there's always implementation specific differences, but yeah, largely it's kind of like I said before, like networking is networking, especially in the cloud. If you come in with networking knowledge, I think it's a lot easier to tell when something is specific to the cloud, to that one cloud, uh, or versus it's more of a networking fundamentals. The thing I was saying earlier, though, where if this is your first if this is your first foray into networking, you might not be able to understand that difference right off the bat. But a lot of this stuff is totally transferable, just because networking is networking.
So it actually, yeah, it looks like Arista has an automation certification that goes up to the E level. It's called, and the E level is the ACE-P exam. They have training specific for it. It's Arista Programming Essentials, is what they call the course, and it covers things like it covers Python programming. Um, uh, well, wow, this is largely a Python programming class with some looks like EOS specific stuff like their APIs, um, some other things in there that are sort of Arista specific. But so Arista does have an entire certification track on it looks like Python and their Python APIs.
Hmm.
That's pretty interesting. Huh. Wow. That's a lot of you know what? We should summarize these maybe somewhere in a blog post because we're talking about what's that one, two, three, four, five, six certification tracks across four different vendors, five different vendors, um, for network automation stuff, right? And I include cloud under that umbrella because it's you know it's I if it's not true now, it will be very shortly that you can't really have one without the other.
Sure.
When you get pulled into it. But that's six different certifications right there from major vendors. Um, we have just a few minutes left. We've been on this call for a little while because just of the breadth of it. But I just want to reiterate. I said at the beginning, and now I didn't realize there was six of them. I missed a few preparing for the show. Definitely, for sure, it seems like you know, with that many major vendors covering this area and that many certifications going up, all the way up to the E level in some cases. So we're talking about very difficult exams. They don't create these certification tracks and put these training programs together for nothing. People are asking for it. So this skill set is now it's valuable. It's valuable, and if this is something you're interested in, you have a lot of options now. So I
Yeah.
encourage everyone, whatever it is you're using your environment, whether it's Cisco, Juniper, Arista, whether or all of the above. Some people have many vendors or some multiple vendors. Whether you're in Google or AWS, um, you know it, these certifications could end up being quite valuable. You'll certainly learn at least some skills in the process. Like I said, seed those foundations so that you can go and you can train yourself more deeply on these other topics.
Yeah.
You know,
And try to go outside your comfort zone. Don't just stay with the thing you focused on. Challenge yourself and learn something that seems
yeah.
like it's like not part of your normal day to day, or maybe not part of your own infrastructure. Learn something new.
So, Matt, do you think when these sort of certifications surface and they're widely accepted, look, with this many vendors, this is now commonly accepted as something of value. Do you think this is sort of like a threshold or a benchmark now that says, this is now mainstream, this is now something to pay attention to? Like what? I mean, it seems like to me it is. Like I'm sort of making this assumption when I'm sitting here talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably too early to tell. The like I said, I think the nature of offering a certification course on a particular domain or set of products is a lot easier than offering a certification program on the cloud or programming. I mean, those are very open ended, very creative. Technology areas, like you have to leverage your creativity a lot more to build things there. It's just a much more of an open-ended thing, right? So there's not like one way to do any of that stuff. I mean, that's technically true in networking. I'm just saying it's even less true in when you're talking about building software for any purpose. So I think these certifications exist because networking folks or really infrastructure folks as a whole are like, look, this is all very new. I need guidance. I need structure, and the structure that they've been given thus far is through the certification program. So I think having these out there is the natural extension of that. Will these survive in 5 to 10 years? I don't know. Maybe it's just a transition tool. Maybe once the industry as a whole, once we get critical mass around a lot of these new terms and tools and languages, then maybe these won't be needed anymore. But it's impossible to predict. That's at least 20 years out probably. Um, so who knows? But clearly, to your point, these exist because of one thing, and that is demand. A lot of I cannot tell you the number of folks when I give a talk. I don't give a talk in the context of a certification program. I give a talk in or a workshop in the context of my own experiences. And so the next question after questions after the workshop is like, how, where do I go now? How can I continue to learn? And a lot of folks, they need that structure. They need somebody to give them the syllabus, right?
Yeah.
So that they know what's out there. And that's what I think, that's what these certification programs offer, which is understandable. The encouragement that I would offer is, yes, that's fine. Treat these as sort of an intro syllabus where it gives you the sort of the list of topics that you didn't even know existed, and that way that way they're on your radar, which is awesome. Do that, but then go further. Don't stop there. Don't just stop at what these certifications offer. Use them as a guide for teaching you the existence of these topics. Once you go through the cert, continue to go much more deep, much deeper, and understand at a deep level at least one or two aspects of the things you just learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, all right. I think, well, we're at the top. We're almost at the top of the hour. So I think
Wow, we just spent an hour talking about certifications.
I
That's
did
great.
not expect that to happen. I'm going to be honest. That's me. Wow. That's,
Yeah.
hmm.
And I just realized we didn't really show anything other than our faces, so we'll have to compile a list of links for folks to
Yeah, we'll put
follow
some
along.
links.
Let's
Yeah,
let's
we'll,
do
we'll
that.
make a list of these. We'll link to all of them, and we'll put them on our site. Um, I can. It just wouldn't be hard to do that, but we'll maybe it'll show up tomorrow or the next day,
Yeah.
just so people can check it out. All right. Thank you for joining us today. Again, I'm Derek Winkworth, aka at Cloud Toad, all one word, CloudToad. You can follow me there, and my co-host Matt Oswalt at Mierdin, Mierdin, also on Twitter, and you can follow the project as a whole at NRE Labs. So please do that, and yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Alrighty.
Ciao.
Thanks.